Now, Moscow's decision to halt its participation in the grain deal comes hours after a blast knocked out a bridge connecting the Crimean peninsula to Russia. Russian authorities blaming Ukrainian sea drones for the attack. Authorities in Kyiv so far have remained tight-lipped. Ukraine typically doesn't confirm attacks carried out on Crimea or inside Russia. We can now bring in Samuel Ramani, Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24. Now, we have Russia suspending its participation in this grain deal on the same day that this bridge comes under attack. Are they linked at all?
Well, I think it's quite interesting to see the timing of this because after the first Crimean Bridge attack in October of 2022, 3 weeks later, Russia withdrew from the grain deal as well, citing the threat of British and Ukrainian attacks on the Russian Black Sea Fleet on the Crimean Peninsula, and then it rejoined it. So it's interesting that the second time Russia withdraws from the Black Sea grain deal, this incident also with the Crimean Bridge attack. I think that this time, because of the grain and fertilizer disputes and because of the fact that they have a lot of grievances against the deal, the Ukrainians may have calculated that the Russians are probably going to scrap it anyway, so might as well attack. There's nothing to lose.
Okay, so you're saying that this was dead in the water to begin with. Let's talk about this Russian attack on this Ukrainian, rather, suspected attack on this bridge connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland. Is that part of the Ukrainian counteroffensive as well going forward, considering that they have admitted to facing a tough time on the battlefield?
Well, Ukraine's counteroffensive has always consisted of several layers. It's consisted of the core offensive operations that we're seeing in South Donetsk, outside Bakhmut, Zaporizhzhia, and other fronts, as well as selective strikes to undermine Russia's logistics and Russia's military capabilities in Crimea and to supply chains coming from inside Russia. The Kerch Bridge attack was aimed at disrupting the supply chains between Crimea and Zaporizhzhia, and also, I think, also aimed at creating discord inside Russia because of Russian partisan attacks on Belgorod. Because of the Watergate mutiny, the Russians may well be looking inward as well as towards Ukraine. So it could create discord that's beneficial for the Ukrainians too.
While all this is going on, the Vatican has dispatched an official to Washington who's apparently behind peace talks. It is part of that effort, the Vatican's effort, to get all sides to the table. This official is going to meet officials in the United States after having already met Ukrainian and Russian officials. Where are we on the diplomatic front to bring an end to this conflict?
Well, the Vatican has definitely been trying to do a lot from the very beginning, but Pope Francis' comments and some other controversies have seemingly undermined it. But the Vatican's efforts are going to be very, very difficult, just like the way the efforts that were coming from France and Germany earlier on the war to kind of give Putin an off-ramp, or efforts from China, or efforts from Indonesia, Turkey, many other countries, because the Ukrainians want to recapture all of their territory, and the Russians
Samuel, I just want to jump in there because
right now.
If this grain deal does in fact end and prices go up once again, this is clearly going to impact, as you said, consumers in Europe. Won't governments in Europe sort of apply pressure to Ukraine, or behind the scenes at least, to get them to talk?
Well, I mean, I think that's interesting. I think the biggest thing, obviously, will be the price increases that will impact the global south, so in particular Africa and the Middle East. But there was a substantial amount of Ukrainian grain from the grain deal that was being resupplied to Europe. Still, I just don't think the public opinion right now is favoring, Ukraine ceding large chunks of its territory to the Russians, or seeing the Russians come out of this war with more territory than they had to begin with. I think that's almost universal. The highest level of support for Russia in the Pew Research surveys in Europe was Greece with 32%. I don't think that there's going to be much political appetite for a ceasefire right now while the counteroffensive is underway.
Well, we haven't actually had a response from African states, the states in the global south who are dependent on this grain, because we're unsure of if Russia will be supplying grain for free, as they've alluded to in the past.
Well, the Russians have definitely made the free grain offer something that's very enticing, and they've pushed a lot of information in media saying that it was the Ukrainians who blockaded and mined their ports, and it was also the American sanctions that were to blame. So I think that given the fact that the African Union, people like South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, Senegalese President Macky Sall, they tend to repeat these narratives. I think that, Russian influence and soft power in Africa may not be hurt as much as one might think, given how damaging this is. You would expect more, but actually they may end up being okay.
Samuel Ramani, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the program today.